On the refrigerant management. I am going to give an overview of refrigerant management and the programs that we need to follow and why. And then we'll jump into APIMS in the refrigerant module and walk through that. All right, so refrigerant management. Oops. So why do we track refrigerants? I think most of you probably know this, so I'll go over some of this kind of quickly, but for those of you that maybe are not as familiar, this is a good introduction to it. The refrigerants represent a significant source of ozone-depleting chemicals, also known as ODCs. Stateside, Section 608 of the Clean Air Act talks about this. There is also an APIMS, so an Air Force pamphlet 32, and it's 7000XX because we don't know where it's at right now. It is still in draft. I have seen drafts of it. I know it's close to being finalized, but I have not seen the final version of it yet. Several years ago, when they got rid of the AFIs and changed it to the AFMAN 32 7001 or 7002, they incorporated refrigerants. Now they're getting ready to release an APIMS. So be aware that there will be some new Air Force guidance coming out, hopefully in the near future on this. For those of you overseas, there is the OEBGD and the FGS that does include refrigerant guidance, so be aware of that as well. Ozone depleting chemicals, they have dangerous health and environmental effects. They're included in your TRI, not applicable to you overseas, but greenhouse gas emission inventory. Now, I know Europe is a lot more progressive than the US, so your regulations in this area are probably more stringent than we actually have here stateside. So make sure that you are aware of those local regulations. What is an ozone depleting chemical? So these are divided into classes. So class 1 substances are those with an ozone depleting potential of 0.2 or higher. They include your CFCs, so your chlorofluorocarbons, your halons, your carbon tetrachloride, methylchloroform, methyl bromide, and your HBF, so your hydrobromofluorocarbons, which is a mouthful. And then there is class 2 substances are those with an ozone depleting potential value less than 0.2 or include all HFCFCs, so hydrochlorofluorocarbons. What are some common uses of refrigerants? The most common is your air conditioner. So you're going to have your rooftop units. So when you're doing an inventory at your installation, make sure that you are looking for things on the rooftop, refrigerators, and even smaller window units. I know some office buildings will end up having smaller window units. All of those need to be accounted for because all of them contain refrigerant. Okay, any questions about what types of units are going to have refrigerant in them or ODCs? All right, I kind of included the 608 regulatory requirements. Now I know that you aren't subject to the EPA. However, like I said, in the most recent version of the OEBGD, a lot of this was incorporated in for both engines and refrigerants. So I think for context, it's good to understand what the 608 compliance is, just so you understand what is in the OEBGD and why. So the background of the management rules it focuses on technician certification, which definitely applies to your installations, refrigerant recovery and recycling equipment, refrigerant leaks, restriction on sales, record keeping requirements, safe disposal requirements, reclamation, and then service practice requirements. So these are procedures that have to be followed by the technicians when working on refrigerant equipment. All right, so a quick background of the refrigerant rules. Clean Air Act, Section 608 talks about Oh, sorry, I put myself on mute to clear my throat. Let me get back to background of management rules. So the Clean Air Act, Section 608, is good for you to understand because, like I said, it's incorporated in. It focuses on regulating the venting of Class 1 and 2 ODS. It makes sure that you conduct repairs and calculate leak rates for all equipment containing more than 50 pounds of Class 1 or 2 ODCs. And leak rates must not exceed these thresholds for the following equipment types. So for example, comfort cooling can't be more than 10%, commercial 20%, and industrial 30%. Now these thresholds are in the OEBGD. They're not always in the FGSs. Europe takes a bit of a different tact at it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But these thresholds are important to understand because APIMS bases their notifications of leak rate exceedance on these percentages. And so if you have it set to calculate leak rates and you get an alert that you're exceeding it, it's because it's exceeding these thresholds. Okay. So now for the FGS, based on my review, and I think I went through all of the FGSs, but you guys can correct me if I missed a particular country because I think I looked at Turkey, Italy, Germany, England. I don't know if I looked at the Spain or Portugal FGS, but most all of them include venting prohibition of Class 1 and 2 ODS, also HFCs and PFCs, so hydrofluorocarbons and perfluorocarbons. So you guys have a little bit of additional materials to track. Like I said, Europe's a little bit more progressive. And then your leak monitoring is based on capacity. So instead of leak rate calculations in the FGSs, it's usually frequency of inspections. So from 3 to 30 kilograms, it requires annual inspections of that equipment. From 30 to 300 kilograms, you have to inspect every 6 months, and then greater than 300 kilogram inspections every 3 months. And then all equipment with 50 pounds or more ODS, or 22.7 kilograms, ODS must be repaired within 30 days of discovering a leak. And then leak rates must not exceed the following. And so you can see that your leak rate exceedances are a little bit higher than what was in the previous slide. Okay. So now we talked about the different leak rate thresholds. So now we need to talk about what are the different types of equipment. So comfort cooling, these are air conditioning appliances that provide cooling for the comfort of people working in it. So facilities that have offices or commercial buildings, residential, things like that. Commercial refrigerant are appliances used in retail food, cold storage warehouses. This could be things like the BX or the commissary on your installations would be commercial refrigerant. But cold storage includes refrigerant equipment to store meat, produce, dairy products, other perishable goods. And then industrial process refrigeration. This is complex customized appliances that are directly linked to the processes used. For example, chemical, pharmaceutical, manufacturing industries, industrial ice machines, things like that. I don't know if you all have any of these industrial process refrigerations. You may, but the most common that we see in my experience is the comfort cooling and the commercial refrigerant. So other useful definitions, a circuit. This is important to understand when we are talking about capacity. We are not talking about the capacity of the entire unit when it's a multi-circuit unit. We're talking about that particular circuit. So a refrigerant circuit is the part of an appliance that are normally connected to each other and only separated by internal valves. So independent refrigerant circuits are those that are designed to prevent mingling of refrigerant from one circuit to another circuit. Okay, so you can have a unit that is a multi-circuit unit that has one circuit that's leaking and one that's not. The leak rate needs to be calculated on that particular circuit. So they're They're closed loop, separate from each other, but within maybe the same larger pieces of equipment. And the 50-pound capacity or the kilogram, the 3 to 30, that's all based on each circuit within that unit, okay? A small appliance is any appliance that's fully manufactured, charged, and hermetically sealed in a factory with 5 pounds or less of refrigerant. This can be small refrigerators and freezers. It can be medical equipment, room air conditioners. It can be those portable air conditioners, dehumidifiers, ice makers, things like that. Okay, and so small appliances are usually not included, so that's going to be the less than 3 on your inspection. Some examples of refrigerants common in the Air Force. So Class 1, hopefully nobody has any Class 1 anymore. Class 2 ODS is R22 and R123. I believe a lot of the overseas installations have R22 still. There are rules regulating that as those pieces of equipment come under repair, the refrigerant gets transitioned from R22 to, I don't remember which one it is. I think it's 404 to a substitute refrigerant. And I know there's also additional regulations that you have to work with DLA on recycling your R22. So be aware of that, a lot of times that needs to be sent back to DLA for recycling and reuse. And then your substitutes 134, 404, 407, and 410. All right, calculating leak rate. So leak rate is defined as the rate at which an appliance is losing refrigerant. There are 2 different types of methods that you can calculate it. It can be the pounds of refrigerant added divided by the full charge, and this is by full charge, I mean circuit, times 365 days over the shorter number of days since the last refrigerant was added, times 100. That's known as method 1. When I will show you how you can do that. It's all about your cylinder management, Nathan, and so we can talk about how that is. So you do need to keep an inventory of what cylinders you have on your installation, and there's a way to show that you don't have it anymore. That's basically all you need to do. The rest is handled through DLA. Okay. All right, so that's method 1. Then you've got method 2, which is the rolling average method, pounds of refrigerant added over the past 365 days, or since the last follow-up verification test, divided by pounds of refrigerant and full charge. Once again, this full charge is just for that particular circuit. The most common method used by installations is method 1. Now, one thing to know about this is if you use method 1 to calculate the leak for equipment A, that means that you have to use method 1 for the entire life of equipment A, and you have to use method 1 for all other pieces of equipment within that facility. Okay, so once you pick a method, you have to use that same method for all appliances and for the life of that appliance. This was because people were picking and choosing which one would give them the better number, and that was giving them false results. So once you pick one, you're basically stuck with it. I would recommend method 1 personally. And there's the little alert to reiterate what I just said. All right, now the APIMS refrigerant compliance module. So it was configured for all refrigerant record keeping in accordance with the Clean Air Act 608 and the AFMAN 327002. Current equipment and cylinder inventory, so this is important. And the AFI or the AFMAN does mandate that you keep your refrigerant equipment inventory up to date and in APIMS. You need to have planned replacement dates. You can track the refrigerant added, removed, or lost. and then equipment and service repaired, replaced, or decommissioned. You can also track technician certifications. So as you know, part of the regulations are that only certified technicians are authorized to work on refrigerant equipment. And then it does the automatic leak rate calculations by method 1 or method 2, programmatic reminders for required follow-up leak verification. Now, roles and responsibilities, and I don't know if we have any HVAC shop personnel here, but they're responsible for tracking the comprehensive equipment inventory, maintaining certification for all technicians in the shop, identifying and repairing leaking appliances, calculate leak rates for each identified leak, and document all equipment inventory maintenance, calculated leak rates in accordance with APIMS 327002. Now, the environmental element is responsible for periodically reviewing the refrigerant data maintained in APIMS and verify that all repairs are made within the required time frame, and make sure that shop personnel are trained on how to document all of this in APIMS. If you go to your shop and find that the personnel that did know or had access to APIMS have PCS out and they no longer have access, please reach out to AFCEC for support. We can provide training. We can also help re-baseline inventory so that you can come back into compliance with the AFMANs. All right, any questions about that quick overview of what you're supposed to do and why? All right, is everyone still with me? Okay, hopefully everyone still is familiar with most of those rules, and it's not new information. Like I said, it's a little different for you all being overseas because, like I said, Europe does if it has a certain amount, you have to inspect at a certain frequency. So your shops are probably going to be doing inspections more often than some of the shops in PACAF or here stateside. So it's important that the shop have a sufficient amount of people that can use the module and have access to the module. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into APIMS here. So as David showed you, you've got the air home, power home, and then there is a refrigerant home. So if you click on the refrigerant home, you're going to have the headers of service, cylinders, equipment, reports, and then I'm not sure if you'll have these. I think based on my roles, I have setup and admin. Setup does have point of contact and location. So point of contact, that's where you can put your technician certifications. So let's just go find one. So we're going to look at Fred here. So for my technicians, I need to make sure I have a point of contact record set up so I can assign the service records to them. And then under the certifications tab, I can upload their certification. And I can actually include a file of their certification. If you do that, please make sure, I think they've stopped doing it, but some of the older refrigerant certifications that we came across had social security numbers on them. Just make sure that you protect the PII and black that out before uploading the document, as APIMS is not authorized to have that data. But yes, you can have these technician certification right here, and then it's viewable by anybody that goes and sees the service records that this particular technician completed, okay? And then location, this is the same as the location in APIMS and facility power and everywhere. You've got your location tree. Location can be very important though, as if you do need to go find where a particular unit is, or if a unit gets replaced, it's best to know where to find that. Okay. All right. Now let's go back to the refrigerants home. You'll have to excuse my voice. It's a little raspy at this time of day. My allergies sometimes get the best of me at this early hour. All right, so let's go to cylinders first. So you can either add a cylinder or look at your refrigerant inventory. From here, you can track all of the different types of cylinders. You have non-refillable, refillable, and recovery cylinders. And so Nathan, this is where you would have your cylinders. Now, if I was to look at this non-refillable cylinder, each cylinder has an ID that I can specify so I can track it. It has a refrigerant that's in it, the capacity. You can even specify a location if you have multiple places that you have cylinders stored. It has the ability to have the tare weight of the cylinder and the gross weight and the remaining amount of cylinder. So when I have done this, a lot of times you guys have scales in your shop. The tare weight is usually stamped on the cylinder. So you can get that and enter it, and then re-baseline these as you need to, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and click Edit View to look at the different data on this cylinder. So for this one, it's a non-refillable R22. There's a capacity, there's a tare weight. As you can see, the gross weight takes into account the tare weight. And then on the Transactions tab, I can see where I use this cylinder to do repairs. And so I have traceability of all the refrigerant that was taken out of that cylinder and where it went. You can also have reconciliation. So this particular record, we set the gross weight, which then made the transaction amount be less, a pound less than what it was. Okay. And then equipment recorded, we put 30 pounds into that particular equipment ID. You can click on the hyperlink and find out some of the basic facts about that particular piece of equipment. Okay, so you can also create a transaction from there. Another interesting thing is as I change this, it will change the picture over here of what the cylinder may or may not look like. Okay. It defaults to active. I can also look at historic. So right now I do not have any historic. If, let's say that I use all of this or I send it off, let's say it's a recovery cylinder of R22 and I send it off to DLA to be recycled, I can click on this archive, remove cylinder from inventory button. And it will let me specify disposal. So if I do disposal, it'll ask me the facility that I sent it to for disposal. This is part of the regulations. Only certain places are allowed to dispose of this. If I say reclamation, once again, I have to pick from somebody that's authorized to reclaim it. Or I can specify transfer. And at that point in time, you can say that you transferred it to DLA. So Nathan, hopefully that answered your question on how to handle that. Once you do that, that cylinder Let's just say sent for recycle. That cylinder will be removed from our inventory. And you can see that it does not show up here. We used to have 3, now we have 2. But if I was to go to historical, I still have a record of what happened with that cylinder. And I can see when I did that, when I transferred it, okay? The other thing is you notice this red exclamation point. That is letting you know that the hydrostatic test date is past due. So you can log the last hydrostatic test date. It will provide a projected next hydrostatic test date and then give you an alert if you have passed that date, okay? So hydrostatic test date only applies to your recovery cylinders, and they do need to receive hydrostatic testing periodically. Any questions about the cylinder inventory so far and how to manage this? Now, a best practice is to reconcile your refrigerant inventory. As you know, some of these weights can get a little bit off. What I like to do when I go into a shop is, like I said, make sure that the tare weight is set. And then just get a scale and say, okay, this says that the current gross weight is 20 pounds, 8 ounces. Let's say that I went and weighed it and it was only 20 pounds, 2 ounces. I can account for that and re-baseline it. So by checking the box here, and you can do this with multiple selections at a time, I can click the reconcile button. At that point in time, I can change what the gross weight is. So I said 20 pounds, 2 ounces, transaction note, re-weighed cylinder, and then save it. It will then decrement that down, and it will show a history of my transaction and put transaction type of reconciliation, okay? So it's recommended that maybe, as time allows, once a month, once a quarter, you do a cylinder reconciliation just to make sure that you do have an accurate accounting of your refrigerant inventory. All right, any questions about cylinders before I move on to equipment? Okay. All right, now let's go to equipment. You've got equipment inventory, add new equipment, decommissioned appliances, and then models. So let's go to equipment. All right, now hopefully everybody has a baseline of refrigerant equipment. If not, you should start getting your inventory in. If you need assistance getting your inventory baseline, please reach out to ACECOM for support. This is something that is done periodically. I believe Asina at Insulic, you guys just got yours in last year, right? Yeah, so for a lot of you overseas installations, maybe you hadn't been using it before. The baseline of the inventory can be a daunting task, but there is support for that. So please work with Dr. Yablik and ask for support to make sure that you can get your inventory baseline. There are filters up here at the top, as is true for most of the newer grids within APIMS. So you can search on the type of refrigerant. There are also alerts here. I don't know if we have any right now. This is where your leak rate Antecedences would be logs. You can sort by clicking on the title. You can export to Excel, and you can add or remove fields from this search window by clicking the checkbox to include it or not. You can also move up by clicking and dragging and reorder your screen how you want. Okay, and that's true of any of the search grids that you see that are in this format. There's also a management group. I don't know if you have this on your installation where, and you probably do, different groups manage different sets of equipment or sets of cylinders. You can have it segregated by management group so everybody can only see their particular equipment. Okay. All right, so I'm going to reset this. So when I hit reset, it's going to take everything back to the default view. So let's look at a piece of equipment that is 106 pounds. So if to look at this, we can hit the edit record button. Okay, so this is a water chiller for industrial cooling. You can include the real property ID. The facility leak rate calculation is method 1, and I'll show you how to set that. So we've set that in a different place in APIMS, and so now it knows to apply method 1 to all of the equipment. Like I said, once you pick one a method of calculation, you need to do it for all equipment and for the life of the equipment. The management group, in this case, it's HVAC. If you have tenant organizations, you can create them and have their own data set as well. Subject to leak rate verification, this one is yes. And then tactical support equipment, there's some exemptions here stateside for that. Then you can move on to specifications. This is where you can talk about the total system charged, the method used to determine the system charge. This can be actual amount evacuated and added. It can be the average of multiple. It can be based on component sizes, or it could be per the manufacturer. Most new units, you're going to have to go with what the manufacturer had. This is updatable as you transaction on the unit. So if you do a repair and you put 107 pounds in, it's going to ask you if you want to update the total system charge in the service log so that you can refine this, because as you know, the manufacturer says the unit's 106, but once you add in all the piping and things like that, it could end up being more. Okay. You can also put the heating and cooling capacity of the unit, the refrigerant, and then this is where you set the equipment category. So whether it's comfort cooling or what's it called, industrial, so on and so forth. And then whether it's on the phase out list. Okay. Equipment type. There are a lot of different equipment types that can apply to you. You've got freezers, recovery equipment, air conditioners, condensers. So pretty much everything that you need. There's even split. So, and then let's see, combinations where you've got your heat and your AC all in one unit. That's also pretty common. The status, this basically says whether it's active, inactive, removed, so on and so forth, same as with your processes. You can upload records if you have schematics for a unit, you can upload those. And then if there's a particular contact, if there's somebody that maybe you need to talk to gain access to the unit, you can track that here if you would like, just for continuity, so that if you're not around and somebody needs to know who to talk to, this is also a good resource for that. All right, let's go back to equipment inventory. Let me see if I can find a multi-circuit unit. All right, let's look and see if we can find a big unit. I know I have some big units in here. I just have to find them. So let's see if this one is. Yeah, okay, so this one is a multi-circuit unit. Why is that not working? Okay, so permanently isolated circuits, I can say 2. I can give each circuit an ID and a circuit charge in pounds and ounces. Now that is one problem that you guys are going to have. APIMS does everything off of pounds and ounces. I know I've talked to some of you about there should be a setting where you can say we work in metric. That would be a change request. I would suggest that you put in the method that David showed you earlier in the facility power module. But right now you're going to have to work off of pounds and ounces instead of kilograms. So it makes your life a little bit harder, but I know you guys can manage that. All right, now this is what the leak rate is going to be calculated based on, is the capacity of each circuit. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, now let's go to decommissioned appliances. So this is where you can track appliances that you have evacuated the refrigerant from and are no longer active. You can edit, you can bring them back into service. And then let's see, there is a report here that will tell you about the piece of equipment. Maybe it will show up for me. And so this is basically the service record for what the life of the particular unit. Okay. All right. If we were to go edit view this, you can see same thing, and you can go to status and it will tell you when it was decommissioned. Now, to decommission an appliance that's in inventory, you have to do a mothball, and that is a service record. There are non-inventoried. So these are the things that just get dropped off at the HVAC shop. So I hear tell that dorm fridges and things like that will just get dropped off because people at least know that the refrigerant has to be evacuated and they can't just throw it away. But you may or may not know where that piece of equipment came from. You just know that you need to document that you evacuated the refrigerant. And so that's where these non-inventoried would come from. To do that, you need to go to service and say decommission appliance not in inventory. From there, you can, select what it is, fill it out. Once again, everything with a bold asterisk needs to be filled out. It'll allow you to tell the refrigerant recovered, the amount recovered, the technician that did it, and you can save it. Now, this is required here stateside to track all appliances that are decommissioned and prove that you evacuated it out. I don't remember seeing anything in the OEBDD, but I would suggest that you complete this, as it's just always best to make sure that you can prove that you did your due diligence to make sure that no ODCs were vented or released to the atmosphere. All right, now let's go to, I'm going to show you where the leak rate calculation is, and then we'll get into the service log. So if I go to homes and I go to air home, and I go to setup, preferences, in here you've got system, nope, that's not it. I went to the wrong place, sorry. Setup, air facility. And from there, you can edit view and go to preferences. This is where you can set up your refrigerants. So in APIMS for your air emission inventories, you should have just one base-wide HVAC process. You can assign that here so that all refrigerant that is released or leaked will then become usage rolled up to this process for all of your emission calculations. Okay, so you don't have to find out what the net loss was. If your HVAC shop is using the refrigerant module and you configure your parent process, APIMS will take care of all of that for you. All you have to do is to add this to your calculation package and make sure it gets reported with your AEI or your GHG inventory. Okay, and then it says adjust cylinder amount via service log. So basically what this means is if I do a leak repair, do you want me to auto decrement from the cylinder that I select? And so it basically ties your cylinders to your service records. You can say, I pulled 5 pounds of refrigerant from cylinder 123 and put it in unit 456. Okay, you can turn that on or off. I'm not sure how it's set for your installations. I didn't go look at that for everybody, but I would recommend that everybody come to this tab and see how your data is configured to make sure that you do have a parent process. You're adjusting via the service log, and then your leak rate calculation method, this is where you can set that. So method 1 or method 2, this particular installation is method 1. Now you can see that it is grayed out. The reason why it is grayed out is because it has been selected and leak rates have been calculated based on this method. And so this goes back to once you choose this, you have to always choose this. And so APIMS kind of protects you from yourself and does not allow you to modify that. Okay. Any questions about this screen and how to set it up and how the refrigerant module ties into the air module? Okay. All right, now we're going to go back to the refrigerants home, and we're going to talk about service records. So let's go to service and click on service records. This is where you can see all of the different service records. So you can see here, I've looked at a particular equipment ID, and it will show all of the different leak repairs that have been conducted that match my search criteria. Once again, there are alerts. So if I look at this triangle with an exclamation point means that I have exceeded my leak rate limit. And then the calendar icon says that my final leak rate verification is past due. So it will let you know that you need to circle back and do leak rate verifications. So for those of you that maybe don't know, when you repair a leaking unit, you're required to go back within a certain number of days to verify that the repair you made actually did fix the leak, okay? So let's go, we can go in and look at that real quick. So for my service record, I had a work order number. It was a leak repair. We re-injected uncontaminated refrigerant. The circuit pack capacity was 54 pounds. We added 26 pounds from this particular cylinder. So that's where I talk about the auto decrement from cylinders. So if I was to go look at this cylinder, it would show that 26 pounds and 8 ounces were taken out of this particular cylinder and put into this piece of equipment. So the net loss was 26 pounds. Leak rate calculations method 1. As you can see here, it calculated the leak rate. It's showing it red because it's exceeding the threshold for that type of equipment. You've got the service description, and then you can even upload the service record. If I come here, he did his initial verification that same day. He did a soap bubble test. And now he needs to go back in and log his final verification date, test method, and results. Okay. So it's very important that everybody goes back in and does the final verification and documents it. And the alert should help shop personnel manage that. Okay, so this can be kind of like a status board. Now, if I was to create a service record, I can come up here and say add service record. And then it's going to pull up a list of all of my inventory for equipment. So this is a pretty big one here. Let's go ahead and we can click the plus sign to create a record. I can type in the service date, or I can use the calendar icon. Let's say that we did it yesterday. The work order, this can link to like Tririga, or just Tririga that the work orders come in through. Once again, if I have my technicians set up, I can have all of their information here, and it'll even give you the certificate. So if I had his HVAC certification uploaded into that point of contact record, it would show up here. If I had multiple technicians, I can specify other people that were on site. Now, when I pick my service type, you can see there's a little information button here. If I'm not sure what I'm supposed to pick, I can click on this, and it will talk about the different types of services that I can do with a short description. So there is a little bit of help here. The fields here will change based on my selection. So if I say leak repair, it'll say what additional refrigerant, did I reclaim it, or did I re-inject it? So if I reclaimed it, it's going to say amount recovered. If I re-injected it, it's going to say how much additional refrigerant did I add. Mothball decommission. So this is how I decommission an appliance that's in inventory. Once again, I can say reclaimed or recovered. And then I can specify the recovery cylinder that I put it in and the amount recovered. I can do multiple cylinders if I needed to. Now, once I pick mothball and decommission, it will end date that piece of equipment and put it in a status of decommission. So it'll show up on your decommissioned inventory, and it won't show up in your live inventory. Okay. New, so this is when you're adding refrigerant in to a new unit. Overcharge, recharge, and routine maintenance. Now, routine maintenance is the only one that does not have any cylinder information. And this is used to document if you did a repair, but you didn't actually do anything with the circuit. So let's say you did something with the compressor, or you did something with some other part of the piece of equipment that did not involve the refrigeration circuits or recharging or anything like that, so that you can keep a good accounting for any work done to repair that unit. It is going to require a service description. Hopefully people will put in the real comments there. So let's go ahead and look at a leak repair, because that's probably the most common scenario. Let's say that we re-injected it. At this point in time, I can pick my cylinder ID. Now you can see here that it's only showing R22. Now that's because if I look at this particular unit, this unit is specified to have R22 in it. So it knows that I can't put any other type of refrigerant in it. So yeah, the stock number right there is R22. So it's only going to show me cylinders that I can use for that. So I can select a cylinder. I can specify how much refrigerant was added to it. Let's say that that cylinder didn't have very much in it and I needed to have another cylinder. I can go ahead and add that, and I can add as many cylinders as I need. Service description, fixed leak and recharged unit. You want to go ahead and click save. Okay, my record was saved successfully. Now, because I said it was a leak repair, it's going to give me that initial verification like we saw on that other unit. So let's say that I did the verification that same day, I did a soap bubble test, and it passed. Once I hit that, save, PH5. Now, if I come to service records, and I search up this particular unit, I think it was this one. It usually will then say have a final verification. I think it has to pass more than one date. But I do need to remember that if I did have a leak repair, to go back in and make sure that I do a final verification on that. Okay. And you can see here that it calculated the leak rate percent, because this is a large, very large unit. Any questions on the service log? Do you want me to go through another scenario? Does anybody have any questions about this that have come up in their use of the module, or something that they want me to specifically address? All right, it's fairly intuitive, this module. But if you do go in and start using it and have a question, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me, or you can reach out to the help desk. So that is all of the screens there. I do want to talk about reports. So let's go look at reports. There are several reports that are built into the module. So you can look at all your decommissioned refrigerant equipment. You can look at your current inventory. You can find out if you have excessive annual leak rates. Your refrigerant inventory, this is going to be your cylinders, your refrigerant transactions, service records, technician certifications, and then you can do custom. So let's go and look at our refrigerant equipment inventory. You can specify a equipment start date from time. You can specify a facility, or you can even specify a location or refrigerant. I'm just going to say for the facility that I'm in, and I'm going to run the report. Now, with all of them, it's going to give you an Excel file to download up here at the top of your screen. If you click on that, it will then give you a list of all of your refrigerant equipment and pertinent details of the type of refrigerant, number of isolated circuits, total system charge, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's one of the reports that's available. The other report that I like is your refrigerant inventory. So if I want to know what my refrigerant inventory is as of today for my facility, I can specify that I just want equipment, I just want cylinders, or I want both. And when I do both, I can run the report, and it'll include everything, and it'll break it out by different types of refrigerant. So each refrigerant will have a different tab, and that tab will include the cylinders and the equipment, and give me a total sum for each type of refrigerant. Okay. can see I have a lot in inventory. Although it looks like there's a bit of a problem with this report that I may need to talk to somebody about because it's not summing the equipment the correct way. So I'm going to make a note of that. And that may be something that's just in the training environment. I'm not sure. I'll have to go check that in production as well. And so those are the reports there. There is one other report that I want to show everyone that can kind of help air quality managers find out how their installations are doing in complying with the AFMAN to track this in APIMS. If I go to reports, custom, there is an enterprise metric report. Actually, you know what? The problem is I'm in, sorry, I was in a training database and the report doesn't exist in the training database. It's only in production. So give me 1 second to log into production and show you where this report is. So if I come to report and I go to custom, and I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to run this report for the whole Air Force so you guys can see all of it. If I go to folders, public folders, public APIMS reports, PMO reports, and then air quality. I know it's a lot. There is under quality control a refrigerant module metrics report. If I double click on that, it will show me the days since a service record has been logged. There's different thresholds. I believe if it's greater than 90 days, it's yellow. If it's greater than 180, it's orange. And if it's over 365, it's red. So as you can see, there's a lot of installations that have not been consistently using the refrigerant module. I will warn you that these types of metrics are going to start getting looked at by management a lot more. So now would be the time to go see how you're doing. And you can refresh it. I'm pulling it for the whole Air Force now. So now these ones you can see, there's some of them that have been using it and some that obviously haven't. So let's see. USAFE, it looks like quite a few of you are doing very well. So good job on that. We'll scroll up and not talk about the ones that maybe are not using it. But if you are not using it, I understand overseas it's very hard with the staff turnover and things like that. Please reach out to APIMS. They can help you get right with it. So that's just one of the reports that's out there and available. The last thing I wanted to show you was, so that was the refrigerant module. And then I was going to go to the air home and show you how this ties in. Maybe I was going to show you how it ties in. So if I go to unique process and I search on the source category ODC, that's my base-wide HVAC process. All I need to do from an air standpoint is make sure that this is set up and make sure that under facility, it is linked as my parent process. And all of the usage will come from the net loss service records from the refrigerant module and any cylinder reconciliations as well. Okay, so source category ODC, If I go to equipment, it will show me all of my refrigerant equipment. These do not need to be associated in order for it to calculate based on the service records, but it will link all of your refrigerant equipment to the process, okay? And then you just have to make sure that your calculations are set up with an algorithm and that it is tied to an emission calculation. All right. So that is all I had to show you today. We're ending a little bit early, but I'm more than happy to field any questions that you may have or show anything again that maybe went by a little quickly or that you had a question about. And for those of you that don't have questions, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your time. And like I said, I will hopefully be seeing or talking to most of you tomorrow for the conclusion of the class. I believe we are slated to talk about fuel transfer, storage tanks, emission calculations, and custom reporting. And so, like I said, David is done with his portion for the week, so you get me for the rest of the week.